I noticed on Twitter that a lot of people are wondering about the differences between the TOEFL test and the IELTS test, and I'm hopefully going to explain some of the key differences today. Before I do that, the first thing that you need to understand is why you are taking one of the two tests. Is it because you're going to university? Is it because you'd like to move to another country and you need it for visa reasons? Is it for your CV or resume? Or finally, is it just because you want to do it to improve your English? So let's answer those questions. Now, first of all, if you're going to university and you've been asked to take one of the two tests, make sure you know which one the university prefers and also which one the university finds most important to the language. So for example, if you're going to an American university, take the TOEFL test in general, because the TOEFL test is an American-based exam. If you're going to England, Scotland, Wales, anywhere in the UK, Australia, New Zealand or Canada, in general, they prefer the IELTS test. But remember, that is just a generalization. Please check with the university. The same thing, if you're hoping to move, for example, from Russia to America, make sure that you're asking the right thing from the embassy and make sure you're asking about the right questions regarding your visa. If they prefer IELTS, then of course do IELTS, and the same thing for TOEFL. If it's on your CV, it doesn't make so much difference, but for example, people living in England probably should do the IELTS test because it's more about the English or the British voice and British English. Finally, if you are not sure and you've got questions about it, just check and think about the reason you're taking the test. Now, in terms of the tests themselves, they're the same in some respects and very different in others. The way that it's the same is that in both tests you do listening, you do reading, you do writing, and you do speaking. As I said before, TOEFL is with the American English and IELTS is with British and Australian English. This means that obviously when you're doing listening and maybe when you're doing the speaking test, you'll hear different pronunciation. In general, IELTS in the listening test has British and Australian speakers. The TOEFL test is generally American and Canadian speakers, if you can understand the small difference between those two accents. So, when it comes to the actual tests themselves, IELTS is generally done on paper, and TOEFL, the IBT test, is done on a computer. Now, if you've got questions about the two types of TOEFL test, again, make sure you know which one you're doing. In today's video, I'm talking about the TOEFL IBT, which is the internet-based TOEFL exam. Now, IELTS. First of all, the listening will happen first on your exam. It lasts about 45 minutes. And in that listening test, you only have one opportunity to listen. There are 40 questions, there are 4 sections, and each section lasts between 7 and 9 minutes, more or less. Sometimes it varies. With the TOEFL listening test, it can actually take much longer, and the test generally will guide you through. You don't need to worry too much about keeping the time because everything on the computer will help you to understand which question to answer and when. The major difference is that during the listening test for TOEFL, you will take notes. For example, you'll hear a conversation or you'll hear a lecture, you'll write notes, and then you will answer the following questions related to what you listen to. In IELTS, you listen and you write basically at the same time. The reading test. Again, IELTS is on paper. You answer the questions at the same time. You circle the answers on the page, for example, and then you write them on your answer sheet. The reading test is 40 questions again for IELTS, and it takes 1 hour in 3 sections, 20, 20 and 20-minute sections. In TOEFL, the reading test, of course, again is on the computer. It involves different skills, and the timer is not definite for this exam. Writing is relatively similar. In both tests, you do 2 types of writing. In IELTS, the first one is called Task 1 and the second one is called Task 2. In TOEFL, the first one is called Integrated and the second one is called Independent. Let's talk about the IELTS writing Task 1. In this case, it is academic writing. Now again, you need to check if you're doing the IELTS academic or the IELTS general test. Maybe later I'll record a video about that difference, but today I'm talking only about the IELTS academic test, which is important when you're talking about writing especially. In that test, you've got 20 minutes and you must write a minimum of 150 words. No less than that, and if you make that mistake, unfortunately you'll have a pretty negative effect on your result. Now, in that first test, there's an analytical task where you analyse a table, a chart, a pie chart, or something like a bar graph. In a rare case, you might need to analyse a map, or you might need to analyse a process. Like I said, it's 20 minutes, 150 words minimum. For TOEFL, the first piece, which I said was called Integrated, you've got 20 minutes and you must write between 150, 175 words. The good news is that on the TOEFL test, you get to type on the computer and it will tell you your word count. On the IELTS test, because you're using a pen and paper, you won't know exactly how many words you've written, and that's a skill that you'll need to develop, which again, maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. Task 2, IELTS, and Independent, TOEFL, are basically the same with two crucial differences. The first difference is that in IELTS, you write 250 words and you have 40 minutes. Unfortunately, in TOEFL, you need to write 300 words, but they only give you 30 minutes. That might be a problem for some people. However, if you prefer typing and using a computer, TOEFL will be better for you, because in the IELTS test, you'll have to use a pen and paper. And again, you won't know how many words you've written on IELTS, whereas you will for the TOEFL test. Okay, speaking. Now this is probably the part which is most different, because in IELTS, you speak to a person face to face. In TOEFL, you speak to a computer. It's a little bit unusual, and some people feel more comfortable speaking to a person, other people feel more comfortable talking to a computer. Again, that might influence your decision if you have the flexibility to make that decision. So, the speaking test for IELTS is in 3 sections. The first section is basically a bit of a chat. The second section is where you have a piece of card with a question on it, and finally you have a more academic discussion with your examiner. TOEFL is completely different because you've got 6 questions. 2 of them are independent and 4 of them are integrated. Now if you've got questions about the TOEFL speaking, you can also look at the YouTube videos that we made earlier. But guys, please, like I said at the very beginning, check the reason why you're taking the exam, who wants you to take the exam, where you're taking the exam, and the main point is to check what the university or embassy want. Please be careful. If you've got any questions, then please send us an email. Visit the website behind me. It's www.aspinallelt.com. I'm sure I've missed out a few things, so if you've got any questions, please do get in touch and I'll be very happy to answer them. Thanks very much.